Hi Paw Prints, and welcome back to my channel. First off, I have the dishwasher going, so I hope it's not too loud. But I thought that I would bring you here today and show you how I make homemade dog food for my dogs. The recipe can kind of vary if there's other veggies you want to add in. This is just sort of my standard of what I put into mine. So I have here and also the amounts differ. Sometimes I make more, sometimes I make less. Right now I don't have a lot of room in the fridge or freezer, so I'm not going to make as big of a batch as I normally might. But I'm just going to show you this is what I put into my dog food regardless of how large of a batch I make. So for this batch, I have 2 bunches of celery. And all of these vegetables have been washed in vinegar water, just so that you guys know. So 2 bunches of celery, 4 bunches of parsley. We do have parsley growing in our garden right now, but we don't have as much as I need for the dog food because it's still coming in. So 2 bunches of celery, 4 bunches of parsley, 10 carrots, 2 heads of cauliflower, 4 yams, 4 green zucchini, and 4 yellow, what are these called? Yellow crookneck squash. And then I also have a bag of peas. And normally in my dog food, I put a combination of rainbow chard, kale, and spinach. However, the store didn't have that right now, and ours hasn't. We don't have enough growing in the garden. So what I did find was a big bag of just kale. So that's what I'm going to use this time. Then I also use, this is just Uncle Ben's white converted rice. So I use some of that. And usually I make my dog food with chicken breasts that I cook for a really long time, and then I just grind it up so it's nice and small for them. But they've kind of been wanting a little bit of a change. I think their taste is getting a little bit bored with the chicken. So for the past few times, I've been making it with ground beef. And so I'm going to show you how I do this ground beef, because you have to be really careful with dogs and maybe animals in general that they don't have too much fat in their diet. If they do, they can get pancreatitis, and unfortunately that can sometimes be deadly to them. So I'm very cautious with the amount of fat and sodium that I let my dogs have. This dish doesn't have any sodium at all, and I'm real careful with the fat in the hamburger. So I'll show you how that's made. I just wanted to give you kind of a baseline of the ingredients. I have an enormous silver bowl. I can't even describe to you how big it is. It's huge. And in this, I already have some of the hamburger that I cooked last night and some leftover of that rice that I had cooked for our dinner. So I just threw that into here, and then we'll add some more too. So the first thing I'm going to get going is the hamburger, and I'm going to take you over to the stove and show you how I fry it up and how I kind of process it to rid it of the fat. So I'll see you in just a minute. Okay guys, so I'm back, and you can see I've got the hamburger in my really large cast iron skillet here. And my stove goes from 4 to medium for temperature, and so I have the stove set in between those 2 settings. And I'm just going to keep breaking it down until it's all scrambled up, and I will bring you back to show you how it looks as soon as that's done, and to show you what I do to get rid of the fat. See you in a minute. Okay guys, so let's get to work on the vegetables. First thing I'm going to do is throw the green peas into my food processor. And the only bad thing about this recipe is, unfortunately, the food processor scares one of my dogs. But it makes it a lot easier to get this done. So I'm going to put this lid on, and we'll grind up the peas. Okay guys, so I'm just going to basically chop up the veggies and drop them into the processor, get everything processed up, throw it into that big silver bowl that I showed you, and when all of that's done, I'll bring you back for the next part of this recipe. See you soon. Okay guys, so I'm back and the hamburger is all scrambled up. And what I did was I tilted the pan, drained it of grease, put the hamburger back in the pan. Now what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have to do it in a couple of batches, is I have a colander. I'm going to scoop some about probably halfway, 3/4 of the way up. And I'm going to keep doing this until all the hamburger's done. And then I'm going to run the colander with the hamburger under hot water, and I'm going to kind of go through it, make sure your hands are clean, but I'm going to go through it with my hands until the hot water rinses out the remainder of the grease. And it's really important that you drain your hamburger before you do this step, because you don't want hardly any grease going down into your sink. You really don't want any grease going into your sink, but by the time it gets to my sink, there won't be much left. Because it can clog your sink, your garbage disposal, your pipes. So you want to get as much grease off as you can before you do this. And then when you rinse it under hot water, not too much will be coming off. So I'm going to just process all of this hamburger and do that. And then I'll bring you back when it's time to mix everything together and show you what that looks like. See you soon. Okay, so this bowl right now has all of the chopped veggies. It has the rice that has not been cooked, and in the very bottom of the bowl is that little bit of rice and hamburger that already has been cooked. So make sure you take your rings off, your jewelry off, make sure your hands are clean, because now we're going to mix all of this together. And as you can see, it's a huge amount, even just the amount that I made today. And usually I make about double this, but my fridge and freezer right now are packed because I just went to the grocery store the other day for like the first time in, I think, about a month. So I made a smaller batch this time, but even the small batch is enormous. And it's loaded with all kinds of good stuff. My pets are family. There is no difference between actual family members and that are human and them. So they have to eat just as good as we do. They have to have all their vitamins. And actually, that reminds me, I wanted to make sure you guys know this particular recipe that I make for them, I have run by my vet, and she said it's totally fine. It gives them all the good stuff that they need. But my dogs are still on daily vitamin. They take a joint thing, and they take a daily multivitamin that the vet said that way, just on the off chance that they're not getting enough of something in the diet, that will take care of it. And so this combo works really good for us, and it's, like I said, we've talked over extensively with the vet. But please make sure that for whatever animal you're cooking for, you check with your vet before you just start implementing this. Every animal has different things that they need to take into consideration. So this is just what works for us. I just wanted to share this recipe with you guys in case it's something that works for you guys and that you're interested in. But I do definitely recommend running everything by your vet before you start implementing it for your pet. Okay, so I think this is pretty mixed up. It's such a big bowl, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. But I think this is pretty mixed up. So I'm going to get the hamburger, and then I'll bring you back and show you the next part of this recipe. Okay guys, so the next step is to put this into whatever large pots you have. I have 2 big pots right here. I'm going to have to do it in batches because they won't hold all of this. And actually, sometimes what I do is I'll just cook 2 pots and add the meat in after it's done. And then the rest of this, without the meat, I just freeze it. And then when the batch that I have cooked is almost gone, I'll cook up more of these vegetables and add more meat. And so it basically can make some ahead. that you don't have to cook it to freeze it. You can freeze just this, and then when you have more room or when you're ready or whatever, you can do it at that time. And that's probably what I'm going to end up doing tonight, because I still need to get started on dinner. And so I think that's probably what I'll do. I'll just cook up 2 potfuls. Also, the other thing is, when you make enormous amounts like this, when it's time to add the meat in, it's really hard to fit into this bowl, even though this is a huge bowl, and to mix. So it's actually easier if you do it in a little bit smaller batches. So I'm just going to fill 2 pots like this, almost to the top. And then a lot of times I cook it in broth. So if I do chicken, I do chicken broth. If I'm doing beef like I am today, I'll do beef broth. I only have chicken broth right now. I need to go get some beef broth the next time I go to the store. And I don't know, I'm sure the dogs would think it's fine, but for me personally, the thought of beef broth and chicken, or chicken broth with beef, just something about it I don't like. So I'm just going to use water to cook this one in. And it'll be just fine. It'll still take on the flavor of the beef and the vegetables anyway. So, all right, I'm going to fill these pots with water and put them on, and I'm going to let them come up to a boil. Once they've done that, I'm going to reduce the heat until it's just simmering. And then I'm just going to simmer and stir it every so often until the vegetables are cooked through and the rice is plump and tender. And then I will show you the final step. So I will be back in a bit. So I did end up just doing 2 pots of the vegetables, and then with the uncooked veggies and rice combo that's left, just put it in a freezer Ziploc. I'm going to seal it up and just toss it in the freezer to be ready, and then all I have to do is cook it up and cook up more meat whenever we need more. So I have my really big bowl here, and we're just going to dump this in. Let me move this over a little bit. And then I've got the cooked and defatted meat. I'm just going to add that. And let me bring this in front. Okay. And the easiest way to mix this is actually when everything's cool and you just mix it with your hands. But I'm just going to do it with this spoon because it's getting pretty close to their dinner time. So I've got a whole bunch of little eyes down on the floor staring at me. And then what the vet told me for my particular dogs is to feed them a half a cup twice a day, so breakfast and dinner. But that also varies depending on the time of year, at least for them. Like in the wintertime when it's colder, then they get 3/4 cup because they need a little bit more. If one of them just is acting like they are hungry and didn't feel like they got enough, then sometimes I'll give them like maybe a 1/4 cup at lunchtime. But for the most part, most of the time they get a half cup twice a day. And our vet is really good and monitors their weight regularly, and they get regular checkups, and so they're closely monitored to make sure that they're getting plenty of food, but not so much that it's unhealthy for them. Okay, so that is pretty thoroughly mixed. So this is what the final product looks like. And in just a little bit, I'm going to dish theirs up once it's cooled a little more, and I'm going to give them a good hot dinner. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was something useful for you, and please remember to always leave your paw print of good in this world. See you next time.